I believe we have to face into the fact that the crisis, the financial crisis, was caused by bad business decision-making, not by the regulators, not by the rating agencies. They were all part of it, but it was bad decisions about allocation of capital by boards and by CEOs. Let's start with that proposition. And unlike Enron and WorldCom, where there was fraud at the top of the companies that blew through systems, here all systems failed. Finance, legal, risk, HR, operational leadership, senior leadership, boards. It was a fundamental failure of business decision-making. Now, one of the responses, of course, is to re-regulate and to change governance so that the government is more involved in that. And yet we all know that we have to have creativity and innovation in a sound way. So my comments today are aimed more at what can we do on the governance side in the private sector to address this question of trust, this complete failure of trust. And I recognize that that is a huge problem. And so I think that we need to have more business leaders, people like CED, speaking out on how we can fix this on the private sector side in complement with what is inevitably going to happen on the governmental side. And without criticizing anybody in particular, I would say that the financial sector has been noticeably quiet, has not spoken out about what the problems were, why they occurred, what should be done, how they're going to do it, and how it will be credible. Let me offer just 4 quick thoughts in the brief time that I've got. I think we first of all have to redefine what the CEO does, not only in financial companies, but in all companies. And it's really 2 things. It is not just taking risk, it is basically managing risk. And how do you balance financial discipline with creativity and innovation? That is the guts of what business people do, but we have to redefine the CEO role to basically acknowledge that. I also believe deeply that we have to fuse high performance, high economic performance, with high integrity, which will mitigate legal, reputational, public policy, and other kinds of risks, and also have affirmative benefits in the company. Those are the 2 key things, in my judgment, in redefining what CEOs do. We obviously then have to pick CEOs who have those qualifications and qualities. A second element is to change the training inside of companies so that we basically train people for those kinds of behaviors. At the moment, we really train people to, have the stock price go up, make profits with a lot of bookkeeping and all those kinds of things. We need to do a different kind of training to encourage the kinds of behaviors of balancing risk-taking with risk management, infusing performance with integrity. Third, we have to radically change the comp system. We all know that. That we've got to do away. We have to have the death knell of the huge annual bonus, which doesn't take into account of the risk. Everybody's writing about that. In my view, too, we have to get rid of the naked stock option and the naked RSU that doesn't really look at economic performance of the company. It measures it by stock price, which, again, I'm on the behavioral side of the argument here, which I don't think necessarily shows what's really happening in the company. It's not necessarily a rational measurement. So we have to change executive comp to measure performance, risk management, and integrity. There are a lot of measurements that you can use. I won't go into it. But I think there's been a lot of discussion of what's called the bonus-malus system, where you don't get all your comp in year 1. You get it spread out over time. And it depends a lot on how you do on these metrics. You can get less if you miss. You can get more if it exceeds the pro forma that you basically signed up to, or you get what is your due. But there is real risk going both ways over time in these comp systems. And lastly, I think we've got to sort of focus the board on what they're paying the CEO for. Their oversight should be what they're paying the CEO for. It ought to be on the 10 or 15 critical issues facing the company. They can touch bottom on those issues. They cannot possibly, at least in a major transnational company, touch the bottom on all the other issues. So we ought to focus what the oversight is on what, in fact, they're paying the CEO and top management for. These are, to my view, not done for the most part. They're seamless. They're interrelated. They are critical. My last comment, that is a nice ideal. There are some problems with it. Can we get the right kind of comp consultants that don't just know about pay packages and what the guy next door or lady next door got, but actually understand company performance, so can design compensation programs that actually go to real creation of economic value and not things that are not creation of economic value. Number 2, there is always going to be a labor market for CEOs. And will boards have the courage or have a way in which they will not just throw money at people, but they will try to encourage people to come because of the value of the company and to do the kinds of things I've talked about. The last thing,
which the CED has written about and is, sort of like, to me, the elephant in the room is the short-termism of the stock market. And everybody's wrung their hands about that. But I think it is, from my observation of a lot of companies, it is, in a way, the original sin that we can't get rid of. And until we figure out a way, or boards have the courage to basically stick with longer-term plans and not be afraid of what some shareholders, not all shareholders, will say, all these suggestions I've made, these 4 interrelated suggestions, will fall founder on the shoals of short-termism as well as the other problems.